Radio.
You're listening to Cryptocurrent, the only podcast that explores the bold projects, exciting opportunities, and the growing reach of blockchain and cryptocurrency. Whether you've got skin in the game or you're just crypto curious, keep an open mind, enjoy the conversation, and stay cryptocurrent. Now here's your host, Richard Carthon.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Cryptocurrent. Your host here, Richard Carthon, and today I got a very special guest. All the way up in Seattle, we have Mr. Greg with RChain. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. And yourself?
I can't complain. It's a beautiful day, and I'm excited to learn about your really cool project because I remember when this came through, and I was like, yes, I definitely want to learn more about this. But before we dive into RChain, let us start first. Let's learn a little bit more about you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and give us some background?
Oh, sure, of course. A lot of times I introduce myself as a poor, stupid mathematician. I pay for my math habit by working in computing. So I'm both a mathmatician and a musician. I've used mathematics professionally for my entire professional life. Probably the biggest project that I did before RChain was Microsoft's BizTalk process orchestration. Okay. So I was principal architect for that. That kind of changed the market and was the first internet scale smart contracting idea, long before smart contracts were something that Ethereum thought of.
Right.
Yeah. So, and a lot of it is based around the math that I've been studying for, studying and developing for over 30 years. I do a lot of what's called a concurrency theory, but also a lot of type theory and a lot of category theory. So those are all things that are at play when we talk about RChain as well.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's go into the first dive into what was your first introduction into the cryptocurrency and blockchain space. What year was it, and what was going on, and what motivated you to want to learn more about it?
Yeah, so it was an interesting journey. I had been developing a decentralized architecture for quite some time. First, I was developing it for the biotech space, especially for data consumers and data providers in biotech. A colleague of mine approached me wanting to build a decentralized social media. So this was in 2009. He wanted to do basically a decentralized Facebook.
Okay.
And so we worked on that till about 2013. Around 2013, I said, we've got a problem, which is that unless, how are we going to monetize this? And unless the mechanism of monetization is also decentralized, it's all going to devolve to a centralized mechanism. And so I started looking around, and I stumbled into Bitcoin because I didn't want to have to build that too.
Yeah. all the elements of it, right?
I was building a decentralized social network, and I didn't want to have to build a decentralized monetization mechanism. So I stumbled into Bitcoin. I thought maybe we could just glue the two together and sort of pursue that architecture for a while, only to realize that first of all, Bitcoin was never going to scale. And then even if you could get that to scale, then there would be security issues with kind of gluing the two architectures together. So when I finally thought about it, I said, okay, well, I'm going to have to build a scalable blockchain before I can build this decentralized social media.
Gotcha.
So it was around 2014 into 2015, and by the end of 2015, I realized I was going to have to bite the bullet and build my own scalable blockchain architecture. And by end of 2016, had committed to doing that. And it was at the beginning of 2017 that RChain was founded.
Perfect. And that was a great transition into the next question of, tell us about RChain. You kind of told us like the transition of how you came up with the concept and like how it all came into being. But at what point were you like, okay, this is the company that I want to make, and like, what was the vision of what you wanted RChain to be?
RChain was built with a central aim in mind. If you look, and it's really hard to ignore the climate data. It's, if you don't have to look much farther than the satellite pictures of Australia to begin to get a sense of how bad it's going to be. It's going to be much worse than we think it is. And we're not coordinating with each other as a species fast enough. We need a different kind of coordination technology. And if you think about it, there's sort of three main coordination technologies. Capital is one of Homo sapiens' greatest inventions for coordinating each other, right? I like to think of it as, right, the real purpose of capital is to help us take care of each other and the planet. That's what it was invented to do. Unfortunately, when we shifted from physical currency to more and more digital forms, so putting banks online and things like that, a lot of the inequities of the capital distribution were accelerated. And as a result, capital is now concentrated in the hands of a few. And whatever your politics are, you cannot avoid the fact that once it's concentrated in the hands of a few, the total number of models we can use capital for in terms of coordination is dramatically reduced at a time when we need to explore more coordination models faster.
Yeah.
So that's one technology, global technology, that needs to be rebooted and rebooted very, very quickly. And I think that's why a lot of people have sort of intuited that, and that's why there's so much interest in blockchain. There's also another technology that we use to coordinate each other, and that's governance, right? And our models of governance are moving way too slowly to address climate change, and that's very obvious at this point. It's actually going backwards in the United States. And if you look actually at the blockchain is also suffering from lack of governance. So there's something there that needs to be looked at. And in particular, one of the things that we're talking about is the fact that the nation state notion of jurisdiction doesn't line up with the realities of climate change. What happens in Brazil affects the entire planet, right? What happens in the rainforest affects all of us. And so there has to be a different kind of governance model than just to trust, if Bolsonaro comes to power and wants to burn down the Amazon, he's dooming all of us, not just the Brazilian citizens. And so there has to be a different notion of what governance means in that setting. But blockchain provides a really interesting alternative when we come to thinking about governance. So we can get into that later in the discussion. And then also, the sort of electronic media has provided this accelerated ability to coordinate each other. But we've also seen what happens when you have centralized electronic media, right? So when Facebook was weaponized by a foreign power in the U.S. to affect our elections, and then Facebook's response to that, both of those were sort of made crystal clear the problems of having a centralized social media. And so again, blockchain provides the possibility for rebooting that technology as well. And so RChain, and if you think about any of those, when you think about taking this to global scale, well, Bitcoin is not, the proof of work architecture just can't get to global scale. It's not possible. You'd have to melt the planet before you could get it to that scale. But there are architectures, and there's sort of a series of architectures, one after the other, of improvement that will get us to the kind of scale where we can coordinate we can reboot those coordination technologies and build out an infrastructure that will allow us to all sort of pitch in and sort of shift the tide, as it were. And then so our chain is built to provide such an infrastructure, but then it also has a governance mechanism, which is a co-op. So we decided that we wanted to begin with, and we recognize that governance is not one size fits all. There's going to be different models for different groups, but we thought that we would begin with something that was the most democratic corporate governance structure that we could think of, and that's one member, one vote, and that's the co-op model, which has a very long history in the U.S. and Europe and in Southeast Asia. So it's a highly respected model. It's very effective. REI is a co-op in the U.S. MEC is a co-op in Canada. There are lots of utility co-ops in the U.S. and throughout the world. So it's a widely respected model that has democracy built in.
Gotcha.
So that's sort of RChain in a nutshell.
All right. Well, thank you for breaking all of that down, just so I can get some of the cliff notes from it. So basic understanding of RChain is that it is trying to help address the impact of potentially global warming, but not just that, having the governance and the three other ways, the I believe you said capital, governments, and one more that
social media, electronic social media.
So it's providing the platform to be able to quickly address all of these things, which of course would help with not only global warming, but with a ton of other world issues that we have going on right now.
Oh, absolutely. So we see blockchain as this pivotal technology that will make it possible to reboot all of those coordination technologies. But gotcha. It will only do that if it can scale.
Right. And so the point of RChain is to use blockchain technology to scale up all of the things that we just talked about.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's it.
Gotcha. Okay. So with that in mind, how has RChain been used so far, and what are some different ways that for either a company or an individual or whomever that would want to come and use your platform, what are some different ways that they could come and use it?
Yeah. So first of all, we just got to mainnet last week. So
congratulations.
Thank you. It's been a long road. So a lot of ways that people have contemplated using RChain. Like, so we funded a company called Proof, and what they were doing was tackling the fake news, right? So the idea is that you would have news sources and news curation that was all crowdsourced. And there would be social rewards, or which could be tokenized, to vet and verify particular stories. You can imagine that if Proof were still around, I don't think they made it through the crypto winter, but yeah. If a company like that were still around, that'd be really useful when it comes to the coronavirus, as an example. Right, because right now it's really hard to get any good data about what's going on actually in China. Right, I've seen many YouTube reports from people who purport to be Chinese citizens who are just tearing their hair out, saying what the government's saying and our experience are completely different. But it's hard to verify whether they're actually Chinese citizens or paid actors.
Right.
So having some kind of a mechanism like that on like Proof would be great, and RChain is designed specifically for that. In November of 2018, they gave a very compelling demo on top of RChain. We also have a company, a group called DAPI, that's providing essentially blockchain validated web resources. So you can trust both the DNS infrastructure. It basically sort of redoes DNS on top of blockchain, which is something a lot of projects have been trying to do. But it makes a lot of what in today's web is a little bit not trustworthy into something that's much more trustworthy, because everyone can see where the resources have come from, and and all the changes that have been made against them. Right. So, I mean, I still want to build a decentralized social media. So looking forward to doing that. But there are lots and lots of applications. I mean, last year we spoke with the there's a conference of utilities, energy utilities that are all cooperatives here in the U.S. So about a year ago, we spoke with them on the sort of the Internet of Energy idea that's got a lot of interest around the world. And of course, RChain, we believe that we'd be a good platform for that kind of application as well.
Awesome. Yeah. So it sounds like there's a lot. I mean, the possibilities are endless of what people can come and build on top of the RChain infrastructure. And thanks again for explaining what the different things you're trying to tackle by building out this blockchain technology. But you've been in this space, you said, for almost about 8 years now. What are some different things that you know or that you're watching for the next year or so that you think should be on people's horizon, whether it's in cryptocurrency or blockchain? What's something that you think is going to be very impactful that is on the horizon?
Well, I think, I mean, if we're looking at like biggest impact, the shift in capital to climate change is enormous. Mm-hmm. So in the last 3 months, we've seen Goldman Sachs comes out with their climate report. JP Morgan comes out with their climate report. BlackRock, the largest hedge fund in the world, is shifting their portfolio to be more climate friendly. So now we're talking about the shift of trillions of dollars. Right. The entire blockchain market doesn't cap $1 trillion. Yeah. Right. And then Bezos just published a $10 billion fund for climate change. So that's just four, just off the top of my head. So the more that we can start to see blockchain projects moving into this space of climate change, and how the technology and specific projects can help with that, I think the more projects will have access to capital. The other side of it is like, and I want to be really blunt and honest. We were under investigation from the Washington State Department of Finance, financial institutions, for like almost 3 years. Mm-hmm. At the end of and this was all about whether or not our token was a security. Right. And what they found was the token might be a security.
Might.
That's it. Wow. But because they're unwilling to give crystal clear, and they won't say why it might be a security. That was the other thing. We tried to put in the reason why. So we ended up signing a consent decree and paying a small fine. But we tried to put clarifying language in the consent decree to get them to commit to a position as to why it might be a security, and they wouldn't do that. And so the background of this, I mean, the reason I mention this is because without good, clear guidance from the regulatory bodies, it makes jurisdictions like Washington and possibly the U.S. not a good place to do crypto business. And that's really unfortunate, because the technology is not going anywhere. And so one of the things that we've been doing is looking at where are good jurisdictions for this kind of thing. And I spent a long time looking at whether or not there were any sort of digital or virtual jurisdictions. Mm-hmm. Estonia has established one. And there are also a bunch of sort of digital or virtual nations that are emerging. So there's one called The Good Country, and there's a TED Talk on that that's sort of dedicated to promoting good in the world. There's one called Asgardia, which is about space. There's BitNation, and there are a few others. And I think in terms of, I guess one of the most recent ones is Aragon. So I think what people should be looking at is the emergence of these virtual jurisdictions. And this goes back to what I was saying before, which is that the existing nation-state infrastructure doesn't fit with the fact of the interconnectedness of things on planet Earth. So, whether you're talking about the prairie lands in the US or the Amazon rainforest or the forests in Africa, all of these things, they have global impact. And so we're going to have to rethink the way jurisdictions relate to resources that impact the entire world. And similarly, blockchain already cuts across multiple jurisdictions. So if you think about it, right, you can write a smart contract that involves resources that are connected to, Paris and London and Tokyo and New York, and who's going to adjudicate problems with that smart contract?
How do you regulate something that there's no third party? So, that's a really good point.
Exactly. So I think those are some areas where we're gonna start to see some real opportunity and some shift.
Good deal. Yeah, I think there's a lot of valid points there, and some points that I haven't heard yet. So it's definitely something I'm going to be looking into myself, of just what is of course, regulation is always going to be king, of just like what is going to definitively be done from a legal standpoint, both in the U.S. and just internationally. They're going to have to put their foot down at some point, and everyone, I think, is just waiting for that. So hopefully that happens sooner than later. But then too, even once you get that figured out, once you start working international borders and having these smart contracts, like if something somehow goes wrong, who's the one to say like, hey, this went wrong and now you need to do whatever? So like that's...
Yeah. Under which law do you prosecute such a dispute? Yeah.
Right. Which is a really good point. But man, Greg, just thank you so much for spending some time with us today. Tell us about RChain, putting some great things on the horizon that we should be looking out for. But what is the final thought that you want to leave with all of our listeners here today?
Yeah. It's something that's been threaded through the entire conversation. Planet Earth is melting. We're in dire straits, and we really have to pull together if we're going to make it. There's no way we're going to avoid suffering. That's past. That's done.
Yeah.
If we tackled it 30 years ago, we might have, but now we're going to have a lot of suffering. The people who, in some sense, who least deserve it, the people who have the least resources, are going to suffer the most. But it's, I always believe that the technology, the things that we need to handle our present moment, always come along at the right time. And blockchain, I think, is one of those pieces. There are many others, but blockchain, I think, is one. And I would really hope that people in this space start to think about how they can use blockchain or their project to help us all pull together and get us not to sustainable, but actually regenerative culture. So I think that's where I would be. That was the note I'd be happy to land on.
For sure. No, I think that's a really great final thought for everyone today. So really appreciate that. What are some different ways that people can learn more about RChain and also connect with you?
Oh, well, also, the simplest one is go to rchain.coop. That's our website, or developer.rchain.coop if they're interested in the tech. We also have a podcast called RCast. Put in about 2 years of really fun material, lots of tech, lots of mathematics, and the kinds of discussions that we had today. And also, you can check us out on our Discord, our public Discord, where the conversation is going on vigorously.
Incredible. Well, again, really appreciate your time today, and for everyone listening, stay cryptocurrent. Hi, everyone. Thanks for listening to another episode of Cryptocurrent. For more information on this episode and all of our episodes, please visit us at www.crypto-current.co. Stay up to date with the latest news in cryptocurrency. You'll receive daily emails Monday through Friday that are personalized and curated content specific to you and your interest, powered by artificial intelligence. Are you an accredited investor looking to invest in cryptocurrency? Crescent City Capital can help. Go to crescentcitycapital.com for more information. If you're finding value in our content, please take 5 minutes to leave a 5-star review and a great comment. Also, please make sure to share this podcast with others. Hello, everyone. I hope you're enjoying the quality of this podcast. I can only thank my amazing producer, Andrew DeRitter, with DeRitter Productions, who has put this together. If you have any podcast, visual, or video needs, please go to deritterproductions.com. That's DERITTER productions.com.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Cryptocurrent with Richard Carthon. We'll be back with more exciting developments from the world of blockchain and cryptocurrency next week. But until then, stay cryptocurrent.
Please use available exits now.